It was a chilly evening in the heart of the city, and the lights from the grand five-star hotel flickered like stars against the dark sky. The hotel was busy as always, with elegantly dressed guests arriving for a night of luxury. Limos lined the street, their drivers holding umbrellas for the well-dressed patrons as they stepped out and walked toward the entrance. The air buzzed with the sounds of laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the rustle of fine clothes. This was a world where wealth and status were on display, a world where everyone knew their place. But then, something strange happened. At the entrance to the hotel stood a man who didn't seem to belong at all. His clothes were worn and tattered, a far cry from the expensive suits and dresses of the guests around him. His shoes were scuffed, and his coat looked like it hadn't seen a wash in weeks. His beard was unkempt, his hair messy, and his eyes were tired. He looked like someone who had been living on the streets, someone who had been forgotten by the world. The doorman, a tall man with a stern face, paused when he saw the man. His eyes scanned the figure standing before him, unsure of what to do. He had worked at this hotel for years, but he had never seen anyone like this. The man didn't look like someone who could afford a night at this luxurious hotel, let alone a room in the presidential suite. As the man approached the door, the doorman hesitated, unsure whether to welcome him inside or ask him to leave. The hotel had strict policies, and appearances were everything. After all, the hotel prided itself on its upscale clientele, its elite guests who would expect nothing less than perfection. The doorman had no idea why the man was there, but something about his tired, worn face made him hesitate. The man, without a word, pulled something from his pocket. It was a small, elegant card, something that looked out of place in his grimy hands. The doorman took a long look at the card, his eyebrows furrowing in confusion. It was a VIP card, the kind that only the wealthiest of guests were given. The man had no business holding such a card. He glanced back up at the man, still unsure of how to react. The man's face remained calm, almost serene, as he met the doorman's gaze. "I'm here to check in," the man said in a voice that was surprisingly smooth. There was no anger, no frustration in his tone. It was as if he belonged, even though everything about his appearance screamed the opposite. The doorman was still frozen, but after a moment, he took the card and quickly typed the man's name into the system. His fingers moved quickly over the keyboard, his heart beating a little faster. Could this really be him? He glanced at the screen, and there it was, David Daniels, a name that didn't belong on any list of common guests. The screen displayed a reservation for the presidential suite, one of the most expensive rooms in the hotel. The doorman's heart skipped a beat. This couldn't be right. The man who looked like he had nothing in the world was about to check into the most luxurious room in the hotel. He looked up at the man again, unsure how to handle the situation. The man didn't look like someone who should be staying in a room like that. Yet there it was, staring back at him. Presidential suite, booked in the name of David Daniels. "Welcome to the hotel, Mr. Daniels," the doorman finally said, his voice uncertain. The man nodded, offering a polite smile. "Thank you." As the man walked through the doors, the doorman stood frozen for a moment, watching him disappear into the grand lobby. The bellboys, the receptionists, and the guests all noticed him, but no one said anything. His appearance was just too out of place in this world of wealth and luxury. Inside the lobby, the staff couldn't help but glance in the man's direction. They saw him moving quietly toward the elevators, his ragged coat trailing behind him as he walked, his worn shoes making soft clicks on the marble floors. It was a stark contrast to the polished, elegant shoes of the other guests. But no one dared to stop him. The receptionist behind the counter stared at her computer screen, still processing the check-in. She, too, had noticed the man. She had been working here for years, and she had seen all kinds of guests, famous celebrities, wealthy business tycoons, and high-profile politicians. But she had never seen anyone like him. She looked at the screen again, making sure she wasn't mistaken. But there it was, David Daniels. The reservation was confirmed. The name on the screen was clear. He was supposed to be staying in the presidential suite. Her curiosity grew. Why would someone who looked like he had nothing book the most luxurious room in the hotel? What kind of story was behind this man? The elevator doors opened, and the man stepped inside, disappearing from view. The receptionist couldn't shake the strange feeling that had settled in her chest. Something about this man seemed different, and she couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. Meanwhile, David Daniels rode up to the top floor of the hotel, his mind calm, his eyes distant. He wasn't worried about the way people looked at him. He wasn't concerned about the whispers that followed him as he walked through the lobby. He had been through too much to let something like this bother him. As the elevator ascended, David closed his eyes and let out a deep breath. This hotel, this city, this life, it was all part of the plan. He had a purpose here, even if no one could see it yet. They would all learn soon enough that appearances could be deceiving. And soon, everyone would understand who David Daniels really was. The night at the hotel continued to unfold as usual. Guests checked in. Bellboys hustled through the lobby carrying luggage, and the sound of fine china clinking filled the air. Yet, beneath the surface, a sense of curiosity lingered, particularly among the hotel staff. David Daniels, the man who had seemed so out of place, had quietly checked into the presidential suite. The staff couldn't stop talking about him, exchanging whispers when they thought no one was listening. Who was he? Where had he come from? Why did he look like someone who had been living on the streets? And most importantly, what kind of man could afford such a lavish room yet appear so ordinary? The receptionist, whose name was Amanda, couldn't help but wonder. She had been working at the hotel for nearly 5 years, and in all that time, she had never encountered anyone quite like him. The guests who typically stayed in the presidential suite were used to luxury. They arrived in limousines or designer clothes and expected nothing less than the very best in service. But this man, he seemed completely different, and it unsettled her. She watched as the night shifted into the early hours of the morning. The hotel was quieter now, with fewer guests roaming the lobby. Still, the thought of David Daniels stuck with her. There was something about his calm, almost tranquil demeanor that intrigued her. He had seemed completely unfazed by the wealth and opulence around him. His unshaven face, his worn clothes, everything about him screamed out of place. Yet he had walked into the hotel with a quiet confidence, as though he belonged, and that left Amanda wondering about his true identity. By the time the evening came to a close, she couldn't resist anymore. She had to find out more about the man who had caused such a stir. Amanda decided to take matters into her own hands. She discreetly told one of the bellboys to check on Mr. Daniels, to make sure everything was to his liking in the presidential suite. After all, he was a guest at the hotel, and it was her responsibility to ensure he had everything he needed. Minutes passed, and Amanda found herself standing near the elevators, her mind racing. Should she go up to his suite herself? Should she confront him? She was torn between professional curiosity and the nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. Just then, the bellboy returned, his face a mix of confusion and awe. "Ms. Amanda," the bellboy said, speaking in a hushed tone. I don't know what to say. Mr. Daniels is fine, but he doesn't want anything from us. He asked me to leave him alone." Amanda frowned. "What do you mean?" The bellboy glanced over his shoulder as though he was worried someone might overhear. He just seemed so different. He said he didn't need anything. I tried to ask him if he needed food or anything, but he told me to leave him alone. He said, "I don't need anything but peace." Amanda's curiosity piqued even more. Peace. What did that even mean? The more she thought about it, the stranger it seemed. The man hadn't come to the hotel to enjoy the lavish amenities, the gourmet restaurants, or the exclusive services. He hadn't even asked for anything from the staff, which was practically unheard of for someone staying in the presidential suite. Later that night, Amanda couldn't sleep. Her mind kept going back to David Daniels. What was he running from? Or was he running toward something? She had to know more. Unable to shake the urge to find answers, she made up her mind to go to his suite the next morning. It would be her only chance to get to the truth. The next day, as the sun began to rise, Amanda took the elevator to the top floor, where the presidential suite was located. The hotel's opulence seemed even more extravagant in the morning light. The floors were gleaming, and the staff were beginning their shifts. She stepped off the elevator and walked toward the suite, her footsteps echoing down the quiet hallway. As she reached the door, she hesitated for a moment, wondering if she was doing the right thing. But she had to know. She knocked softly, waiting for a response. When the door finally creaked open, it wasn't the man she had expected to see. A woman, middle-aged with a calm demeanor and warm eyes, stepped into view. She was dressed simply, yet there was something about her presence that felt dignified. "Hello," Amanda said hesitantly, not sure what to expect. The woman smiled and held up her hand. "It's all right. Don't worry. I'm here with Mr. Daniels." Amanda's eyes widened. You know him." The woman nodded, her face growing somber. "Yes. I'm his sister, but he doesn't like to be disturbed. He's been through a lot, and he's not the person he used to be." Amanda's mind raced. His sister. She had no idea that David Daniels had family. The man seemed like an enigma, a shadow who moved through life unnoticed by the world around him. She hesitated, unsure of what to say. I don't mean to intrude, but I just don't understand. Why is he staying here? Why does he look so different?" The woman sighed, her expression softening. "David has been through many hardships. He used to be someone else, someone important, but he walked away from all of it. He gave up everything. The wealth, the business, the lifestyle. All of it. He wanted peace, and that's what he's looking for. He doesn't want anyone to treat him like a rich man or a celebrity. He wants to be seen for who he really is." Amanda listened carefully, her heart heavy with understanding. It made sense now. This wasn't just about a man staying in a fancy hotel. It was about a man who had made a choice to leave behind everything society valued and find peace in the simplicity of life. David Daniels was not the person anyone thought he was. Days passed since the mysterious man, David Daniels, had checked into the presidential suite of the luxury hotel. The staff had grown accustomed to his presence, but the curiosity surrounding him remained. Most of them kept their distance, respecting his wishes for privacy, but there were whispers among the employees and occasional glances in his direction when he walked through the hotel lobby. Amanda, the receptionist who had first encountered David, found herself consumed with thoughts of him. She couldn't help but wonder, who was he really? What was his past, and why did he seem so determined to remain a mystery? It was clear that he wasn't just some ordinary guest. There was something about him that made her want to dig deeper. One afternoon, while Amanda was sorting through the day's check-ins, she received an unexpected phone call from the hotel manager, Mr. Wright. His voice was crisp, and there was an air of urgency in his tone. "Amanda, I need you to meet me in my office immediately." "It's about David Daniels," he said. Amanda's heart skipped a beat. David Daniels again. She felt a rush of excitement mixed with nervousness. This was it. She was about to find out something significant, something that would finally answer all her questions. She quickly made her way to Mr. Wright's office, her mind racing. What could he possibly want to discuss about David? Did he know something she didn't? When she entered the office, Mr. Wright motioned for her to sit. He looked at her with a serious expression on his face, his hands folded in front of him. The air felt tense, as though a storm was brewing. "Amanda," he began, "I've been looking into Mr. Daniels' background, and I think you need to hear what I discovered." Amanda's curiosity piqued. "What did you find out?" Mr. Wright paused for a moment, ensuring that he had Amanda's full attention. David Daniels isn't just some random guest. He's not a homeless man who just wandered into our hotel. In fact, his past is far more complicated than that. Amanda's heart raced. What do you mean? Mr. Wright leaned forward, his voice lowering to a confidential tone. David Daniels used to be one of the wealthiest men in the world. He was a billionaire, an entrepreneur, a mogul in the tech industry. He built an empire from the ground up, and he was known for his visionary ideas. His company was worth billions, and he was constantly in the headlines. He was the kind of person who had everything: luxury, fame, and power. Amanda's jaw dropped. A billionaire. The man who had appeared so out of place, who had seemed so humble and unremarkable, was one of the wealthiest men on the planet. She could hardly believe it. How had someone like that end up in their hotel, wearing tattered clothes, and acting as though he didn't care about the wealth he once had? Mr. Wright continued. But then something happened. 3 years ago, David Daniels disappeared from the public eye. No one knew where he went. His company went into disarray after his sudden departure, and rumors swirled that he had lost his fortune. But the truth is, David voluntarily gave it all up. He walked away from everything: his empire, his money, his fame. He didn't want it anymore. Amanda could hardly process the information. She had been so focused on David's unusual appearance and behavior that she hadn't imagined he could be the same person the media had once called a genius and a visionary. Now, it made sense. The man who looked like he had nothing was in fact someone who had everything, and then chose to leave it all behind. Why would he do that? Amanda asked, her voice barely a whisper. Why walk away from all that wealth and success? Mr. Wright's expression softened. That's the question, isn't it? No one knows for sure. Some say he had a breakdown. Others believe he just wanted a fresh start. What we do know is that he's been living a very different life since then. No one has heard from him in years, until he showed up at our hotel. And now we have the chance to find out why. Amanda took a deep breath, trying to absorb everything Mr. Wright had just told her. David Daniels wasn't just any guest. He was a man who had changed the course of his life in a way that no one could have imagined. But the story didn't end there. The following morning, Amanda received a surprise. A small envelope, hand-delivered to the front desk with no return address. Inside the envelope was a note, written in a neat, almost methodical handwriting. It simply read, "Meet me at the rooftop at 3 p.m. today. Come alone. It's time for you to know the truth." Amanda's heart skipped a beat. She knew this was it. This was the moment she had been waiting for. David Daniels had reached out to her directly. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she knew one thing for sure: this meeting would reveal everything. She spent the rest of the day with a mix of anticipation and dread. At 3 p.m. sharp, she made her way to the elevator, her heart pounding in her chest. She pressed the button for the rooftop, and as the elevator ascended, she felt like she was walking towards something monumental, something that would change everything. When the elevator doors opened, Amanda stepped out into the open air. The view of the city below was breathtaking, but she barely noticed. She was focused entirely on the figure standing at the edge of the rooftop, David Daniels. He turned to face her as she approached, his eyes calm and steady. He was dressed simply, as always, with no sign of the luxurious life he had once led. But there was something in his presence, something that commanded respect. Amanda stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly. You wanted to meet me." David nodded slowly. "Yes. I've been watching you, Amanda. You've been curious about me. And now, it's time for you to understand why I'm here." He paused, looking out at the city skyline. "I could have stayed in my world. I could have kept running my company, living a life of luxury. But I was miserable. None of it made me happy. It was all empty. So I left. I walked away from everything. And now, I'm here to find something different. Something real." Amanda listened carefully, her heart beginning to understand. This wasn't just about wealth or status. This was about a man who had searched for meaning beyond material success. David turned to face her again. "I came here to this hotel because I wanted to see how people like you, people who live in a world of luxury would treat someone like me. And what I've learned is that appearances don't matter. We're all just people searching for something. And I've found that the thing I was searching for was peace. Peace that I can't find in my old life, no matter how much money I had. Amanda nodded slowly, realizing that this was the truth David had been hiding all along. He wasn't just a man who had walked away from his wealth. He was someone who had made a conscious choice to rediscover who he was, to seek peace in a world that valued the wrong things. And in that moment, Amanda understood. She understood that sometimes the greatest wealth was not measured in money, but in the choices we make to live authentically. The sky above the hotel had begun to darken as the evening approached. The air was cooler now, and the city lights below flickered on one by one, casting a warm golden glow across the horizon. Amanda stood beside David on the rooftop, the weight of his words still lingering in her mind. His choice to walk away from the life of luxury he had once known had left her with so many questions, but now something in his demeanor had changed. The calmness that had defined him before was now replaced with a quiet intensity. David looked out at the city, his face set in deep thought. Amanda, still processing everything she had learned, took a few cautious steps toward him. She had always been curious, but now she felt like she was standing on the edge of something monumental. David finally broke the silence. "You've been asking yourself a lot of questions, haven't you?" His voice was soft but firm, as though he knew exactly what was going on in her mind. Amanda nodded, feeling an almost magnetic pull toward him. "Yes. I don't understand it. You left everything behind, the fortune, the fame. Why come back to the world you left? Why not just disappear completely?" David turned to face her, his expression unreadable for a moment. "I didn't come back to find the old world. I came back to see if I could make something different. Something better." Amanda was confused. "Make something different? What do you mean?" David's eyes softened, and for the first time since their conversation began, he allowed himself a small smile. "You see, Amanda, when I walked away, I thought I was leaving behind everything that had hurt me. But I wasn't just leaving a life of wealth behind. I was leaving the responsibility of my decisions. The things I built, they weren't just mine. They affected everyone around me. The people who worked for me, the people I made promises to, the lives I changed. I thought if I got rid of everything, I could escape the guilt. But I couldn't escape it." Amanda felt a lump form in her throat as she listened. The man standing before her wasn't just the billionaire who had once ruled an empire. He was someone who had been grappling with the consequences of his own ambition, his own actions. He had been searching for redemption, not just for himself, but for those whose lives he had unknowingly altered. David continued, his voice growing more passionate. "I thought I was doing the right thing, but I was wrong. When you have everything, you lose sight of what really matters. I've learned that the things I built weren't just about me. They were about the people I had around me. And I neglected them. I neglected the very people who helped me reach the top. I thought wealth would bring me happiness, but it only brought isolation." Amanda looked at him, her heart aching. She had seen him as a man with everything: power, wealth, influence. But now she saw a man who had been burdened by his own success, a man who was trying to atone for mistakes he felt he couldn't undo. David took a deep breath and let the silence linger between them for a moment. "That's why I came back. To see if I could do something with the pieces of my life that were left. I didn't want to come back and reclaim my wealth. I wanted to see if I could help people without expecting anything in return." Amanda was stunned. She had assumed David's return was about reclaiming power or wealth, but it wasn't. It was about redemption, a desire to make things right, and to show that there was more to life than money and success. "I've seen how the world works. I know what people think," David continued, his gaze steady and unwavering. "I know that when I walked through the doors of this hotel, I looked like someone who had nothing. But the truth is, I'm richer now than I've ever been in my life." Amanda's mind was spinning. Richer. How could he say that when he had left everything behind? But then she realized he wasn't talking about money. He was talking about something much more valuable. Inner peace, the kind of wealth that couldn't be measured in dollars or possessions. I've learned that true wealth comes from giving, from being able to help others without expecting anything in return, David said. And that's why I'm here now. Not because I want to build an empire or be in the spotlight, but because I want to leave something behind that matters, something real. Amanda nodded slowly, her eyes wide with understanding. She could see it now, the transformation in David. He had left behind everything he once held dear, not because he didn't care, but because he needed to find something more meaningful than success. He had come back to rebuild, not for personal gain, but for the sake of others. As the final rays of the sun disappeared below the horizon, David turned to Amanda with a quiet resolve in his eyes. I know I can't undo the past, but I can create a future that's different. I want to help others who feel the way I once did, lost, searching for purpose. I want to show them that there is more to life than what we've been taught to value. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. She had witnessed something extraordinary. She had seen a man who, despite all of his riches, had chosen to leave it behind in search of something more profound. And now she was witnessing the rebirth of a man who was determined to make a positive impact on the world. David extended his hand to her. I don't know where this journey will take me, but I know I can't do it alone. Will you help me, Amanda? Amanda took his hand, feeling the weight of the promise in his words. She had witnessed the true essence of what it meant to live a life of purpose. It wasn't about fame. It wasn't about wealth. It was about helping others, lifting them up, and creating a legacy that would last far beyond material success. I will, Amanda said, her voice steady, her heart full. I'll help you. David smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen from him since they had met. Thank you, he said softly. And with that, Amanda knew that her life had just changed forever. She had met someone who had taught her the real meaning of wealth, and she was about to embark on a journey that would redefine her understanding of what it meant to be truly rich. The lobby of the hotel, once filled with whispers and judgmental glances, now stood in complete silence. Every eye was on the man who had entered looking like a homeless stranger, but who had just revealed the truth that left everyone stunned. David stood tall, no longer just a quiet, tired man in worn-out clothes. He was now the owner of the very place that had looked down on him. His calm expression held the quiet power of someone who no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. The general manager, pale with embarrassment, stepped forward hesitantly. Mr. David, I had no idea. David interrupted him, voice calm but firm. Exactly. You didn't ask. You just assumed. The staff, the guests, the people who had mocked or ignored him, now watched in disbelief. A man they thought had nothing turned out to have everything. And yet he didn't raise his voice, didn't boast. That was what made it powerful. Amanda stood a few steps behind, tears in her eyes. She had seen it all unfold. She had listened, believed, and most of all, she had learned. The man everyone thought was invisible had taught them all the most valuable lesson of their lives. David looked around the room. This hotel was built with heart once, but it lost its way. People forgot that kindness doesn't depend on appearance. Respect shouldn't depend on money. He turned toward a young bellboy standing nervously near the front desk, the only person who had shown him respect from the beginning. What's your name? David asked. Jordan, sir. David smiled warmly. From now on, Jordan, you're promoted. Head of guest services, because you treated a stranger with dignity. And that's more valuable than any degree. The crowd gasped. Jordan looked stunned. The older staff exchanged uneasy glances. A quiet message had been sent. Character over status. David walked toward the exit. The crowd instinctively moved aside, clearing a path. No one laughed now. No one mocked. Their silence was louder than any words. As he passed Amanda, he stopped. Come with me, he he said gently. Amanda nodded without hesitation. She had witnessed his strength, not in power, but in humility. She wanted to be part of whatever came next. Outside, as the city lights flickered and the evening breeze moved gently through the trees, David and Amanda walked away from the Grand Hotel, not as a homeless man and a curious stranger, but as two people on a new mission. No camera flashes, no crowds cheering, just a quiet exit from a man who had nothing to prove and everything to give. FADE out. Screen text. Never judge a book by its cover. True power lies in how you treat others. Soft music plays. The video ends, but the message lingers.